Greetings, friends. We are now in our last section of discovering your own life mapping, and I hope that you've enjoyed working through your life map. And if you have been doing your life map, please come and talk to me and tell me about your experience. Maybe you could share your life map with me or in some venue here at the church, because again, our lives are very important. They're holy because God's in it, and so it's not just your secret. It becomes our property too. Hopefully, the church's property, um, because what God does in your life impacts us all. So, um, I left my last section, chapter 8, in a pretty low place, like the community that I was in that fell apart. And uh, I don't know what we would have done if it wasn't for um, my in-laws graciously um, leaving the community that they were in and quite comfortable in, and getting a house. We called it Oak Haven because it was near the airport over at Westminster and Pinch Valley. It's just a beautiful, beautiful brick colonial. Here I am in the most vulnerable economic way you can imagine, living in this beautiful home with our in-laws, and we had three generations there. And for the most part, especially at the beginning, it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And so it's amazing how God takes care of us, even when things are pretty low. So let's see what we have here. In February 2009, moves with in-laws to Westminster, Maryland. I just talked to you a little bit about that. We call that Oak Haven. Um, what else? And since the community fell apart, we had to look for a new church, and so we transferred to Christ the King Church in Towson. And there, with Father Ed Meeks, I was there helping him out, and such as I could. And the church was in conversation at that point with an Anglican um, denomination that was in conversation with Rome. And so by this time, that whole possibility of entering into Rome was coming on my radar for the first time. So that was in 2009, 2010. Again, the economic difficulties. Um, we were on food stamps for a year and state medical. And I could just tell you stories, miraculous stories about how God provided for us. But I don't have time to get into that. But again, at your lowest, most vulnerable, God shows himself strong. And um, so we have something I probably had to learn, and it took God hit me over the head with this difficult time. And I have to tell you this story. I was driving down the street, down the Jersey Turnpike one day. My wife was sort of snoozing in the front there, and I was looking up in the gray sky driving along. It didn't hear an audible voice, but it was like something God saying, John, you are an envious man. And it's true, because of my um economic difficulties, but even before that, all the way into, grade school. I was always envious of the popular kids. And this didn't get better. When I went into junior high, I think it got worse, and it even got worse in high school. I thought, oh, I'm going to go to Christian college, uh, you know, but I was always a social sort of pariah, outcast type guy, and I have always envied the popular kids and so on and so forth. And then I got into manhood. Um, I looked at men who were successful, financially, and I never was. And so I'd always be sad when I see that. And that sadness is envy. And so it wasn't until this moment of enlightenment that where God said, John, you're an envious man. uh, that I said, oh, I get it, I get it. And I was just tears with gratitude for God revealing that to me in the car. I couldn't wait till Kathy woke up so I could say, hey, guess what? God told me I'm an envious man. But you see, things like that are both sweet, and then they're also sour in a sense. Sweet in that it's truth, and truth is always sweet, and sour in that, you kind of, oh, wow, man, this is not pretty. But that was one of the great things that God showed me in life, it helped me free me of all that. Let's see here. Oh, Kathy gets full-time employment, which is a great thing. I homeschool children. I worked part-time at the church, and I worked as an adjunct for the seminary that I used to be a part of. They took me back because they needed an adjunct, and they didn't mind me being an Anglican, for that. So I worked part-time, started putting things together, hobbling things together. Um, I got a great story about Kathy getting employment. She wanted me to go to the Burke Center in Westminster to go to the unemployment office. I'll go there, So I sit down and there's this lady there, and she looked at me and she said, "What do you do?" And I told her, and she said, "We can't help you." Oh, good grief. Oh, yeah, this is no help. I'm going to a place where it's supposed to help you, no one's helping me. Kathy goes the next day. She's in the jeans and a sweatshirt. And that same lady looked at her and said, "What do you do?" And she said, "I do what you do." And the lady said, "Oh, the boss is in the back. He's looking for somebody." She goes in the back, interviews, comes out with a job. But that just shows you another way of what God takes care of us, And, she had to work for a whole year there or even longer to get benefits, And it's another story, my son Jeremy got really, really ill with the flu so badly. We had an ambulance come, Um, that happened on the last day that we had state medical. And we were going to have a time there where we wouldn't get anything. And, it just God took care of it. It always does. So, and I started homeschooling children. That was a lot of fun in 2010, 2011. I got to teach them all the things that I liked, what have you. Um, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, he, for a birthday present, took me in August 2010 to a retreat at Gethsemane Abbey in Kentucky, where Thomas Merton was. And it was there that God gave me the gift of perseverance in praying my breviary. Okay, so it became a part of my life at that time. And that was a gift because I just couldn't get myself to do it. And that's any kind of prayer in my mind is a gift from God. And then the Lord's Prayer comes alive for me for the first time. I basically said by rote, in church and stuff like that, but it took on a greater and deeper meaning in my life at that time. Important reading here is in preparation for that retreat was Thomas Merton's Seven Storey Mountain. I read that way back. I think I even mentioned that. But rereading it was good, and then Ian Matthews, The Impact of God, Soundings from St. John of the Cross. That's an important book, and big old thick tome on English spiritual. I have the first volume. I haven't gotten to the second one in 10 years. But those are readings that were sort of important. Let's see here. In spring of 2011, finished homeschooling. Probably the most important thing about that is I did a combination of literary, historical walk through history, and my daughter really took to that. And it turns out that that's ancient history, ancient languages. I've been teaching her Latin for 7 years, and my son as well. But Abby had a thing for it, and that's decided her career. Okay, she's working right now on a PhD at Penn in uh, Greek and Roman and Latin literature and languages and stuff like that. She's a scholar. I never was. So you think, oh man, this is a down time. I'm way underemployed. Yeah, I was able to invest my time in my kids. How can things get better than that, really, when you think about it? Let's see here. In summer of 2011, I began to work at another school online and what have you. So, God provide, little bit by little, we emerged out of things. So I believe that's this chapter of my life. As you see, in some ways it's very hard, but on the other hand, I learned so much, and I've had an opportunity, to connect with my kids, so at a very important time in their life. So let's see what else we have here. Oh, yeah, my dear mother dies in 2011, August 2nd. That was a hard one, but she was ready. For years, she was 92. For years, she'd say, "Oh, I'm, uh, uh, I feel like I'm at the train station with my bag waiting for the train to come. Jesus is going to pick her up." Oh, I got to tell you this story too. Um, uh, she was sitting in a chair right before she died, talking with my sister Karen. And she said, "Well, Karen, I hear that John's become a Catholic." And Karen said, "Yeah, yeah." And she said, "I often thought that I would like to become Catholic too, if it wasn't for Ernie," which is my father, who was a Protestant, um, Prussian from the north of Germany. Okay, Catholics were all going to hell, type of thing. So I feel like, well, if I become Catholic, come by it. Honestly, it's in my mother all along. Okay, let's see here. Chapter 10, Becoming Catholic. And that brings us to this part. My son, I stopped, Abby went all the way through homeschooling. But Jeremy, I knew he wanted to get in the military academy, so but I let him go to Winter's Mill in 2011, 2014. That's 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, where he excelled academically um, there, and that prepared him for the future. Let's see here. Became Catholic on June 24th, 2010 at Christ the King in Towson. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. I took Jeremy on a trip to Kenya because I wanted him to see what the world's really like outside the bubble of North America. We we worked at a place called Joytown, where a lot of disabled and kids with all sorts of unspeakable um, conditions. And we went there and helped do some construction there at Joytown. And it was run by Christian Africans, Kenyans, and it's kind of such a well-named place. The joy and those workers, and how they dealt with these kids, really huge impact. There's a lot more to be said about that trip, but that was an interesting thing. Okay, let's see here. Opa's my father-in-law. We were living with him, and things were going. He and I were really close, but in the last 2 years of his life, things got difficult, and his illness was basically PTSD from Vietnam War, where he was a chaplain and saw many horrible things. And quite frankly, it was one of the hardest things. We lived together for 2 years. And so helping out aging parents is something that we know about. We were grateful that he provided a house for us, but the challenges were really, were really hard. But God got us through that, you know. Abigail started going at Franciscan in 2012 to 2014, 2 years. She was in the honors program there, where she studied the classics, and that's why she went there for that. And let's see here. I began teaching at Catholic Distance University, and so I got back into teaching. I did a lot of their biblical stuff there. I'm in 2013, all the way up until I became pastor here last summer, and that's been a great experience. It's a wonderful place. But again, it's kind of part-time. I was ordained a deacon in August of 2013, ordained priest in September 23rd, 2013. You might say, well, I was really on the fast track. Well, yeah, but then when I came into the ordinary of the chair of St. Peter, and they recognized that I've been teaching seminary for all my life, and I had a lot of pastoral experience, and so it was accelerated. Okay. Okay, here. If you know anything about Franciscan, you know about Gaming, and we're in Austria. And we went as a family, my wife and Jeremy and I, to visit Abigail, and that was such a life-changing experience for all of us. It was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And it was at that, my daughter did a semester at Gaming. She knew that her days with a Franciscan were done. She got what she needed from there. And Austria gave her a deep love for Europe. Okay. And well, I'll just tell you, to make the long story short, she went to UMBC and finished up in classics, went for a year of German language studies, and then she got into the University of Heidelberg, got a master's there in Latin and Greek, and then, from there to the University of Penn. So there's all these influences. It's amazing to see how everything what comes together. In August 2014, that's a whole story in itself. But you can thank, if you're happy that I'm here, you can thank Deacon Vito. I came here for a little kind of interview, and it went well, but I didn't know, I had all these little pieces, little gigs, and Father Neville invited me to come back, but I said, no. And so Deacon Vito hid his resume in it somewhere in his room, and to make a long story short, I came back from vacation one day, and I got a phone call from Megan Snyder, the secretary at the time, and saying, hey, you've applied for this job. We need a letter from you. I said, what job? I didn't know there was even a job. Evidently, Vito left took out that resume and gave it to Neville, and somehow I got into the mix and got interviewed, and there I am. You see, God has his ways. He just has his ways. Okay. Let's see here. Jeremy, in 2014, started at West Point, and that's a life-changing experience, especially for somebody like me who has no military background and not even a military nerve or muscle in my body. Becoming a West Point parents was an interesting thing. We'd go there quite a bit, got familiar with the school, went to different functions and balls and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun, for those 4 years. It wasn't fun for my son, but it was. They don't make it fun, So, anyways, let's see here. What else? Abby at UMBC, as I said. In December, right after I started in August here at St. Joseph, I began as pastor at St. Timothy's Church, which is an ordinary church that met in Catonsville. So I was never preaching, if you ever noticed, at that back then, the 10 o'clock Mass, or even the 10:45 Mass, because I would be at St. Timothy's in Catonsville. Now that little church has moved over to worship on Sundays at 10 o'clock at Old St. Joe's Church. And that's how the ordinary provided priest for St. Joe's after the Marians left. I'd like to say that when I began, there were three priests here. Father Neville, Father Paul, and Father David. Father Paul, of course, retired and passed on. Father David moved on. And then there was Father Neville. He's been here 10 years. And so when he left, I was the only one standing. So he just gave me the job. So again, you see God's work in this whole thing, don't you? When you see the whole thing span out, you know. What else do we have here? Opa died in December 31st of 2014, the last day of that year. In April, we bought a house on Ridgemont, where we live today, in Finksburg. Abby graduated 2016 from UMBC, and then, you know, she went to Germany, and that's that. So what else we have here? It was here at St. Joseph in the Adoration Chapel that I discovered adoration, and that has been that's been an avenue for me. I've always wanted to be a contemplative, and I always a contemplative wannabe, and I still am. I'm not really a contemplative. I mean, I've been reading St. John of the Cross for who knows how long, but I like to say, unfortunately, that if I lived in St. John's time, I'd probably be one of his persecutors rather than one of his friends. But I love the man in spite of myself. And whatever contemplative part of me there is, it comes out in adoration. I'd like to do more of it. And as you know, I mean, I've got a long way to go with that and everything else, but it's become important to me from our chapel right here. Well, friends, there it is. I gave you the broad strokes of my life, for my life mapping. I have to tell you that I've been doing this for many years. And as you can see, I have some work to do to go from 2016 till now when I became pastor of the church. A lot has happened. But it's just a good way, life mapping just makes sense of your life and to cause you to reflect on who you are as a person and to maybe see some things that you didn't see before. I think God can work through this in a special way for you, and to coming to grips with certain things that that have influenced you that maybe you haven't really thought about. So again, love to hear from you, and I'd love to see your life map and see what you're doing with it and how it affected you. So I hope this has been a good formation exercise for you this Lent. May God bless you. Bye.